Dougalbird has pointed out, quite rightly, we had a referendum. Decent people are Democrats. They exercise their right to vote, and then they respect the outcome, whichever way it goes. That doesn't include you, though, does it? Farage isn't wrong, Mr. Wilson. You are. No. 6 years after the referendum, more than 6 years after the referendum, I think we have to recognise that the referendum yielded a Brexit which doesn't work. Now, for many reasons, that may be the case. It may be that Brexit was never going to work, that Brexit was an impossibility. But it's also, and I'm perfectly happy to concede, that the problem was Lord Frost. The problem was the way Brexit was negotiated and implemented. The evolving nature of democracy and the necessity of revisiting decisions as circumstances change is important. It's put there, that idea forms a bedrock, though he probably never said it, to the ideas of John Maynard Keynes. When the facts change, he changes his mind. In a democracy, it's essential to respect the outcomes of referendums and elections. However, it's equally important to acknowledge and address the consequences of those outcomes, especially when they prove problematic or detrimental, or when they've outlasted their value. As, for example, in the present Conservative Party, it has outlasted its value, whether you voted for it or not. I think there's many people today who have not voted for the Conservatives to remain in power today. I think there's many people. And probably with good reason, because the Conservative government, as is finally manifest under Rishi Sunak and the hand-waving Liz Truss, has proven to be a deceptive bed of filth, with greed and sleaze and deceit and overweening rhetoric, bullying, in almost every direction that you look. Brexit, as negotiated and implemented, faced significant challenges and criticism, and the people who presided over that negotiation were not the best people to do so, I think. I'm perfectly happy to concede that a wiser group of individuals could have negotiated a very beneficial Brexit. This is not what we are in. The process lacked foresight and proper planning. I remember many a conversation back in 2014, 2015, when I asked people if Britain were to leave Europe, what would happen then? I remember asking people in UKIP in 2015, what would happen then? No one at any point had an answer. And even when the answers were being promoted by Boris on his bus and Farage and Cummings, they were vague and they were wrong. Brexit, to fund the NHS. Is the NHS better off now than it was at Brexit? No, it is on its knees. So we can only draw two conclusions, can't we? Either Boris and his cronies on the bus lied. Well, of course, Boris has a history of deceit, so that's a credible possibility. Or they had not done their work. They had not done due diligence in promoting this scheme. And that, as we see from Lord Frost, is perfectly believable too. Because he thought that citing the Lord's Reform Bill in whatever it was, Section 4, brackets 5, meant that he could leave the House of Lords. He could quit being a Lord. Yes, he could quit being a Lord. He could quit being in the chamber of the House of Lords, but he could not renounce his title because no mechanism was put in place for him to renounce his title. If he did renounce his title, or if his title was renounced for him, if he was stripped of his title, which is a possibility, then yes, of course, he could vote for somebody standing in the House of Commons, or indeed he could be elected into the House of Commons. There was nothing debarring him from that. But the only mechanism available to strip or for a life peer to stop being a life peer is for them to be stripped of that honour by the king. A disgrace. But then, of course, they're free to enter the House of Commons. There is a mechanism for a hereditary peer to not only quit the House of Lords, but also to renounce their title, as long as they do it speedily after inheriting that title. And that is legislation which went through to help Tony Benn. And the problem here was we gave the negotiation to a twit who doesn't read the small print, who doesn't actually look at the laws, and who hasn't recognised what they mean, who doesn't think about them. Because, like so many twits in the Conservative Party at the moment, all they're capable of doing is spouting slogans or half sentences or little bits of information. They don't read the paragraph. They don't read the information. They don't read the legal judgments and the precedents. So they don't really know what they're talking about. I hear many people refer to the Refugee Convention of 1951, which we're still signatories to. And it seems as if Suella Braverman has not actually read not only the convention, but the precedents, the legal precedents which have been set out, which make it absolutely clear that not only can people travel through Europe or through another series of countries to get to the country where they claim asylum, and that is the interpretation of the first safe country, but that a British judge had said that 70 days can be consumed in this process. Up to 70 days. These are British judgments made in Britain, in British courts, not foreign courts. And I think in that particular case they were made about people who had travelled to Spain. And this is the problem. The people who are in government or who have been in government in the last 6 years have been lazy and haven't done their work. Maybe they've been relying on spads who are stupid. That doesn't surprise me. A spad sounds so much like a potato. And renegotiation, without proper foresight, without proper planning, Brexit was implemented, and that's led to the current difficulties. And addressing these issues through renegotiation or even reconsidering the entire decision through another referendum does not inherently undermine democracy. Instead, it can be seen as a democratic response to new realities and new information, just as we go to the polls every 5 years. Democracy is not static. It allows for re-evaluation and adaptation, like, for example, in the early 70s. We had a referendum about joining the common market after we joined it, to ensure the will of the people is accurate and currently reflected. And this approach respects democratic principles by recognizing that voter sentiment and national circumstances can evolve over time. So the idea that we are cut in aspic, and that we are blocked by this referendum, as if it's a form of institutional political constipation, is nonsense. We need the ex-lax of a new referendum, of intelligent debate, rather than the constant recitation of some sort of mantra. Constipation is not resolved by prayer. You need to eat the right stuff, or you need to take the right medicine. But the recitation of slogans is not going to solve the problem. So, Dougalbird, sorry to be so lengthy in that in that explanation, and you may disagree with me. Please come back to me on that. I'd be delighted to respond further, and I may be wrong, but tell me why. Tell me why. But enter into the debate rather than just simply reciting. And Farage, no, Farage is part of that debate. And I would be delighted to discuss this with Farage, particularly if he read the right material and read it thoroughly before opening his mouth.